Listen up. This is a first on MSNBC. A brand new corporate tax plan from 2020 hopeful Elizabeth Warren has been released just minutes ago. You remember this. President Trump promoted a tax cut for all Americans. But companies, big companies, were the clear winners. Understand this, at least 60 companies owed zero federal taxes, or in some cases, even less than zero. That number is way up from 2017, and Senator Warren has a plan to change that. It is called Real Corporate Profit Tax. It says no matter what a company owes in federal taxes, they must pay an additional 7% on anything they make in profit over $100 million. This plan could bring in an estimated $1 trillion over the next 10 years. Here for her first interview since releasing this new plan, Senator Elizabeth Warren. This is a very ambitious plan, Senator. Why propose a new tax instead of just closing the current loopholes and hiking up the corporate tax rate for all companies?
So, look, I think that we should do tax reform and close up a lot of the loopholes, and we need to change the corporate tax rate. But we have a problem right in front of us. Pick just one corporation, Amazon, for example. They reported last year $10 billion in after-tax profits publicly to their investors, to the public, set their executive compensation based on that. That's their big number. Then they turn around and say to the IRS, nah, by the time we go through all the loopholes, our taxable income is zero. What I'm saying is, look, you could raise the corporate tax rate, but Amazon would still pay zero. And you can fight the fight for which loopholes need to be closed and not closed. And I'm ready to fight that fight. But if we simply start with, you make this big public pronouncement about your taxes. It's an audited return, a statement of your income. If you're going to make that big public statement to the public, then we just want to have you pay a 7% tax on that if you're making more than $100 million a year. That way, nobody escapes paying nothing. Everybody profits from being part of this country, and everybody ought to have to make a contribution. Little businesses do it, medium-sized businesses do it, families do it. We want the giant corporations to do it as well.
So let's dig into that more, because I want to be clear. This is not anti-business. This goes after the biggest 1,200 companies out there. And the idea is to level the playing field for small businesses. Can you walk us through why it is that those big businesses, how is it that an Amazon pays nothing and a small business, a corner store, pays significantly more under the current rules?
Right. Well, it's two reasons, principally. The first one is that Amazon and its kind have hired about a bazillion lobbyists in order to get the tax codes written to create just a special exception for them over here, or a special loophole over there, or a special definition over here. Little businesses don't have that opportunity. They don't have an army of lobbyists here in Washington. The second is those loopholes are actually pretty hard to maneuver. So Amazon and its kind hires another army of tax lawyers. They invest in tax lawyers. Small businesses can't do that. Small businesses are trying to run their business. They're lucky if they get one guy to help them out with their taxes. And as a result, the big guys end up paying less in taxes than the small guys. And that's not only less in marginal rates, it's less in absolute dollars. The idea that a company like Amazon or a company like Occidental Petroleum announces publicly $4 billion in after-tax income, then turns around and says to the IRS, sorry, our taxable income is zero. All we're saying is you want to make the big public statement, it's an audited financial statement, pay 7% of that in taxes to make sure you're making a contribution to this country.
But as long as corporations or wealthy Americans are able to hire, as long as high-paid tax lawyers exist, they will be looking for loopholes. In Amazon's case, under your plan, they would owe $698 million. Yep. Who's to say Amazon or one of these big companies won't say, okay, so instead of paying $700 million, I'm just going to separate my company into a bunch of smaller companies that are going to be just under the 100 million threshold, or let's do an inversion, and as of tomorrow, I'm going to be domiciled in Canada.
Right. So you know that a few years ago we put a lot of restrictions on inversions for exactly the reason that these guys didn't want to pay their U.S. taxes. And by golly, it has slowed down and actually stopped the whole inversion process. And look, if you're telling me that the response to this would be that some of these giant corporations that monopolize their entire field would break apart, maybe that's something we ought to talk about. But at the end of the day, look at it this way. The advantage to a 7% tax here is that it's a flat tax. It says don't come back to us with this loophole or that exception. It's just if you have more than $100 million in reported after-tax profits, the 100 millionth and first dollar should be taxed at 7%, and that just goes straight across the board. The simplicity of it is part of what makes it work so well and makes sure no giant corporation in this country gets away with paying zero while small companies and families are having to pick up the ticket to run the country.
Born out of the massive inequality here and abroad, we've seen the rise in democratic socialism. Would you describe yourself as a capitalist or a socialist? Because there are portions of the Democratic Party who consider even the word capitalist a dirty word at best.
No, look, I believe in markets, and I want to see markets work. I've seen the benefits that markets can produce, but understand this, markets without rules are theft. We need markets that have curbs on them, that have rules, so that it's a level playing field, and I mean a genuinely level playing field, so that people have a real chance to compete. And you know, it's good that we talk about this in the context of taxes, because when we force those who've made it really big in this country just to pay a fair share in taxes, the point is not punitive. The point is to say, you had a great idea, you built a great business, good for you. But remember, you built that business using workers all of us paid to educate. You built that business using roads and bridges to get your goods to market, roads and bridges all of us helped pay to build. You built that business protected by firefighters and police officers that all of us helped pay for. And we just want to make sure that when you make it big, put something back in so the next kid has a chance, and the kid after that, and the kid after that. That's what this is about. That $1 trillion that this real corporate profits tax would raise is money that we could spend for universal child care, money we could spend to reduce the student loan debt burden, money we could spend to rebuild our infrastructure, so that we can have more businesses do better in this country and more families do better.
I want to talk about a couple of individuals who I rarely see agree with you, and it stuck out to me in the last week. Jamie Dimon, CEO of J.P. Morgan, a company that made $32 billion last year, who I would think over the last 10 years is afraid of Senator Elizabeth Warren. Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater, one of the most successful hedge funds on the planet, in the last week are using similar, sometimes the same language you are to describe the inequality problem in America. When guys like that and you are suddenly seeing our economy through the same lens, what do you make of that?
Well, what I make of it is that inequality is going to break this country. We can't sustain a democracy. We cannot sustain an America of opportunity with growing inequality. And we've got to have some great ideas to push back, big ideas to push back against it, big structural change. You know, this is what my campaign for president is all about. I believe we ought to talk about the big ideas, about how we deal with inequality, how we build a strong democracy and a strong economy going forward. And I just want to say to everybody who's watching, if you believe in a campaign built on ideas, go to ElizabethWarren.com and sign up, pitch in some money, volunteer some time, because this is how we are going to rebuild our country and rebuild our democracy in a way that doesn't just work for a thin slice at the top, but in a way that works for everybody.
Subsidized child care is an important program for you. To many people, they don't consider that a political issue. It's a human issue.
Yes.
Families across this country cannot afford to go to work and support their family. It's a big program for you. Do you believe it's one that you could reach across the aisle and see voters, people who wouldn't necessarily be in your camp, say, yes, I need that to help my family thrive?
Yes. You know, this one is personal for me. When I made the decision to go to law school, I had a baby. And I got down to the last few days before school started and still couldn't find childcare I could afford. I came that close to not being able to finish my education. And then when I got my first teaching job, my first big teaching job, by then I have 2 babies underfoot, I'm working my rear end off. But at the end of the day, the thing that nearly killed me was childcare. And I'm on the phone late at night talking to my Aunt Bee, 78 years old. And she says, how's it going? And I started to cry and said, I'm going to quit because I just couldn't do it without childcare. She then uttered the 12 words that changed my life. I can't get there tomorrow, but I'll come on Thursday. And she arrived with 7 suitcases and a Pekingese named Buddy and stayed for 16 years. And if everybody in America had an Aunt Bee, we'd be fine. But they don't. And as a result, there are so many people across this country who don't finish their education, who don't take a job, who don't take a more demanding job, who don't take a promotion, all because they just can't manage the child care. We owe it to people who are trying to work hard. We owe it to our children so that they can get the highest quality child care, and we owe it to child care workers who deserve to be paid a professional wage for doing the work they do. We owe it to all of them to make an investment as a country in child care. And here's the cool part. We can do it. We do something like the corporate tax that I've just proposed, the real corporate tax, or the wealth tax that I've talked about, and we have plenty of money to provide universal child care, universal pre-K, universal pre-pre-K, to make the investment in all of our babies, age 0 to 5, and still have trillions of dollars left over.
Well, we know not much works unless you have the money to support it. So let's talk about your campaign. Fundraising and spending. Do you believe you have the ability to raise enough to continue this campaign? Because your team is spending quite a whole lot of money right now, possibly because you're working on a lot of policy.
Yeah, and you've got it exactly right. You know, I'm running the campaign I want to run. It's a campaign fueled by ideas, and it's a campaign fueled by small dollar contributions and not by doing a bunch of fundraisers with millionaires and billionaires. I think this is the right campaign, and it's how we build a grassroots movement that's going to help us come 2020 November and also going to help us come January 2021 in having the momentum to make the big structural changes we need to make. But it means I have to rely on lots of people across this country sending in a donation. So ElizabethWarren.com, send in a donation if you think that we ought to have campaigns that are run on ideas, and if big ideas, big structural changes really matter.
Senator, whether it's you or one of your Democratic competitors, what do you believe is the #1 issue that will put Democrats ahead in the 2020 election to beat President Trump?
I think it's talking about the fundamental question of who government works for. We have a government right now that just works great for the rich and the powerful. It's just not working for anyone else. It works great for giant drug companies, just not for somebody trying to fill a prescription. It works great for giant oil companies that want to drill everywhere, just not for people who see climate change bearing down upon us. I think the fundamental question we have to address is whether or not we're going to go forward with a government that works better and better for a thinner and thinner slice at the top, or if, as a people, we're going to say, we're taking this back. We're going to take our country back, and we're going to make it the country we want it to be. A country where every kid gets a chance to build a future. Not just those born into privilege, but every kid. That's what I think this is about.
All right, Senator. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Senator Elizabeth Warren on her new tax plan. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.